Waymo, Oliver says, don't mistake Waymo for Tesla. They're orders of magnitude apart. Waymo spends $200,000 in AV hardware per vehicle. Tesla, it's about $500 per vehicle. Due to their business models and utilization, Tesla's approach is designed to at most be human level performance, whereas Waymo is superhuman. The analogy between the two is like someone telling you that a $10 flip phone is competitive with an iPhone Pro Max. I love Elon, but he's promised full self-driving each year for 10 years, and they're nowhere close. To Tesla's credit, they have built the best driving assistance product in the country. So, Ben, this week on Certecry, you wrote a little bit about your Tesla experience out there in California. What do you think of Oliver's assessment, and how does it relate to the future of autonomous driving and potentially robo-taxis?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't dived deep into Tesla's cost. I think it's probably more than 500, but
500 seems low.
it does seem a little bit low, especially if you include the compute hardware, but it's not way low. It's not way out of bounds. The point is that there's a massive order of magnitude difference. And I think also for Waymo, it's 200,000 per vehicle. The actual like AV hardware, I think, is probably more on the order of like 50,000 or 60,000.
Okay.
Anyhow, the point being, it's not really comparable at all. So Tesla had more. They had like radars in their cars at one point. They actually took them out, and they actually like disabled the ones that were there for sort of existing users. And like, we're doing just vision. Weirdly enough, I think the Model S and X now have a radar again, but it's not enabled. So who knows what's going on with that? But the point being is, Oliver is putting his finger on probably the single most interesting question about the long-term future of transportation, which is Google right or is Elon Musk right? And here's the issue. There's no question that Oliver is correct right now. Google's approach is better. I was in a Tesla within like 30 seconds. It had there was a necessary disengagement because it's like missing a turn or something like that. I'm not sure if that was a camera issue or a mapping issue, but regardless, Waymo, it's working right now. You have the statistics. Its rate of disengagement, or where it needs human intervention, which happens remotely in that case, is drastically lower than anyone else. Google has been investing in and building their own LiDAR sensors to sort of do all this additional sensing. It has radar, it has LiDAR, it has cameras. It has like triple redundancy for doing all this sort of thing. And there's a possibility that all of that it's definitely necessary now. It definitely works better than Tesla's now. It works better than anyone else. It's on the roads.
By contrast, you need a human there the entire time. And I was surprised reading your piece. I didn't realize that Tesla tracks the human in the driver's seat to make sure that human is paying attention.
There's only 8 cameras, and the 8th camera is focused on the driver's face. And so if you like pick up your phone and start looking at it, it will like get mad at you and make you sort of take control of the car.
Purpose, as far as I'm concerned, but I don't know.
I mean, I rented a car for one day in Los Angeles, and I was ready to buy a Tesla. So I could definitely see the allure. The Southern California traffic is well suited to, even if I don't have my hands on the wheel, I don't want to deal with this crap. So I could definitely see the allure in that regard. Harder to see it in the Midwest. I don't mind driving 85 miles an hour with nothing around me. But yeah, the stop and go traffic is not very fun at all. So anyhow, Waymo's definitely better, right? And it's definitely, Tesla is not close. But the problem is this $200,000 mark. And so on one hand, you expect costs to come down over time as they sort of go to scale. On the other hand, when you think about building out transportation for everyone, this robo-taxi sort of concept, say what you want about Tesla, I think they've coined the name that is going to sort of be about this. It's a real challenge, right? You need to have enough sort of capacity for search when everyone wants a ride, but then when no one wants a ride, then they're sitting around, right? You have to actually, like, the number of rides you would have to take when an Uber is still out there, when there are other competitive services out there, the amount of revenue you have to drive per ride, you're going to have to drive these cars like 300,000 miles or 400,000 miles, at which point, presumably, they're going to have maintenance issues. Maybe the lidars will break, and then you have to replace a very expensive parts, right? And so the right now, the cost structure is very problematic from a sort of from a Waymo perspective. Now, again, things in tech,
assuming that it would be incredibly problematic and probably fatal to anybody that's not funded by Google?
Well, this is, I mean, there's a whole bigger question here. Should Waymo spin it out? Because it's a very different cost structure. It's a relatively low margin business, but it also does have potential like sort of monopoly effects, like, or winner take all effects because of the network bits. Like, you want the greatest example of network effects is, I think, the way Uber killed Lyft. I wrote this ages ago that Uber would win because even though the network effects are pretty slight, you can just get another app easily enough, and a driver can have two phones and have two apps. It's sufficient such that Lyft was long-term doomed and Uber would be dominant. Now, Lyft almost went out of business in 2017, and then Uber went through a gazillion scandals, and Lyft got a bunch more money. But now we fast forward, and so that's really annoying because it took a long time. But now it's like, does anyone really take Lyft anymore? Their financial results don't suggest it's going so great, and Uber's actually making money.
The being right points hearth around
no, because it took timing is a part of being right, and Uber lost a lot of money and to sort of get to this point, and now maybe they're sort of doomed in the long run anyway because the self-driving thing comes along. But you think about it, this actually gets back to the marginal cost point. Okay, you price. Competition means you the floor of your pricing is your marginal cost. So on one hand, this gives Waymo sort of a big advantage. They've already paid for the car, and so they can, the cost of providing a ride is basically the cost of the electricity for the ride, so it's an electrical car or the gas, plus the sort of implied sort of whatever the cost to like clean it or whatever it might be. Like you take a ride, you have to use it. What is not implied in that cost is necessarily depreciation. Now that's a cost. You have to pay for the car, but the cost of doing one more ride isn't necessarily sort of imputed there. And so when you're sort of competing in the market, Uber has much higher marginal costs because they have to pay the driver. So on one hand, it's like, yay, Waymo wins. But on the other hand, that also provides they're as long as there's competition in the market, they have to be underpricing the competition, and so is there a limit to how low they can go? While also the depreciation costs are real, even if they're not necessarily sort of a marginal cost. You have to pay for these 200, and so and you have the serve, anyhow. The whole bit being $200,000 is tough. They're gonna have to bring that down. You counter that to Tesla, where a model, like if they can make a car for $50,000 or their actual cost to create it maybe is less, $30,000 or $35,000 or whatever it might be. And it's like, and it's quote unquote. And so the question is, the problem is the Tesla approach isn't good enough yet to do. Right. And a lot of people say it's not even close to being good enough. And a lot of people say it will never be good enough.
So is it essentially just an Elon Musk reality distortion field? Can he will this into existence and prove all the critics wrong?
I don't know. That's why it's interesting. That's why it's the most interesting question going forward, right?
Betting against Elon, yeah.
Well, I mean, there's this concept with AI called the bitter lesson, which is every time that people they want to add in a little human guidance to the AI, so the AI knows how to solve problems. And so with chess, you add in the rules of chess and how to do it. And it turned out the way to beat chess was just to search every possible move and every possible permutation and then choose the best one. More compute beats human intervention in chess. You fast forward to Go. Everyone's like, oh, you can't do the search algorithm. You need to have humans in there. You have to add some guidelines in how to play Go. Actually, no, you apply massive computing. It figures out, internalizes the rules of chess by basically playing itself a gazillion times, and it's better than a human. And there's a bit with sort of what we're seeing with AI today. There's a bit where we don't really quite know how this stuff works. It's just that it sort of like figures it out, right? And by the application of massive amounts of data and computing. Is there a potential where this actually does matter for cars, where we think right now we need this input from LiDAR and radar and XYZ, but actually there's a bit where we just apply massive amounts of computing to vision. Humans only use vision, right? Why do we need anything more? And it actually becomes viable, and the AI is so good. Like Elon, it's kind of ironic. Elon is the one betting on AI, and Google is the one betting on hardware in this case. And I think probably Google's bet is the right one. But then you look, Elon has a pretty good record. You go to something like a SpaceX, right? Like that's sort of the thing that I cited. all the experts and predictions, people who knew that space, said it was a crazy concept, and getting launch costs to where he was going to was not viable, and then right up until it was, and he sort of did it. And again, it's not a perfect analogy. I'm not saying this is going to be like rockets. There's lots of differences. I'm not saying it's going to be like AI. We're dealing with laws and regulations and pedestrians and all the sort of things that go into this. But if it ever did become good enough, Tesla would crush the market, because it's going to be so much cheaper. They already have production capacity. They actually could go out and dominate the market, wipe out Uber, wipe out Google, wipe out everyone else. And so it's worth taking seriously. I think there's a good chance Oliver is right. Most experts think Oliver is right. The Tesla approach won't work. But when you do expected value, right, of a sort of bet, the function of expected value isn't just the percentage chance that it's right, but it's also the implications of it being right, right? So if there's a 1% chance of something happening, but that outcome is worth $100 billion, the expected value is 1 billion. It's 1% times 100 billion. If the expected value is $100 trillion, the expected value is 1 trillion. And so the reason why, even though I get the skepticism and to a degree share it, the reason why, and yes, Elon overpromises, his deadlines are always nuts, but there is a bit where when we look back in 100 years, if something came in 1 year, it came in 10 years, we're not going to really care, right? Because it came. If they get it right, to have a better cost structure is going to be a huge deal. It's going to be a magnitude difference, and I think the degree to which it impacts society. Because if you have to depreciate a $200,000 asset versus depreciate a $30,000 asset, the amount you can deploy, the amount of times, and then you get a virtuous cycle where when there's way more robo taxis out there, people use it for way more things. It just becomes you create your own demand, and that the cheaper something is, the more you can get that cycle going.
Well,